Welcome to Lore Bytes. In this series, I break down Overwatch story topics and lore topics for you simply and quickly, so you don't have to do the digging. For these videos, I round up all sources of known canon Overwatch lore and add some speculation in as well. If something is speculation, it will be flagged, otherwise assume all of this is canon lore from sources, which I'll cite as well. In today's episode, we're talking about theory crafting, with a quick introduction to the Overwatch timeline, how to go about timelining and constructing an idea of it, and what we can and probably shouldn't try to deduce from that too. If you're trying to get more into story and lore, timelining, or working out a timeline of history or events, is fun to experiment with because it can help you look at characters, events, and the relationships between them in some fun and different lights. There are some things you can and can't do with timelining. What you can do is add some more rich detail and get a more complete sense of the lives of your favourite heroes and villains, the Overwatch world in general, along with a rough sequence of events and how they tie into each other. You can also ask new fun questions and explore the world of lore from a bit of a different angle. What you can't do is precisely date everything. The Overwatch timeline is complex. It probably always will be. Many TV shows, books, and video games will often tweak their story and history as they go, so you should never take anything too literally. Being 100% accurate is probably impossible, and it actually impedes the devs and the storytellers and the writers with good storytelling and evolving stories as they go, so don't be too harsh on people for it. Various folks have tried timelining Overwatch with varying degrees of success and or failure. What I would say is take any timeline with a pinch of salt, as personal theorycraft, headcanon, and some estimation always comes in. There are some rocks of canon or Blizzard sources that people should try to use, although even these are subject to change. I'll give you some examples now. How to start timelining with Overwatch? Well, I would take some key dates from lore sources, cross-reference them with each other and other dates that you can find, and then build a history and sequence of events around them, or just apply them to your favourite character and the people and events in their Overwatch life. Here's some canon dates to get you started, if such a thing exists. I tend to start everything with today as being day 0. Now, there can be up to 1 year variants, depending on if you take the dates of various blogs that have been put on the Play Overwatch website as being the same amount of time apart in the timeline as they've been published. We'll skip that bit for now. Rock number 1. The Omnic Crisis was some 30 years ago. Now that's shown in the Are You With Us Winston teaser trailer that was around the beta, but also in some other places as well. The next one that people tend to go for, 2 decades after Overwatch ended the crisis, it was brought to its knees. So from whenever the Omnic Crisis ended, Overwatch was around for a good 20 years. Now that's from Fading Glory, the Jack Morrison blog. Another one is that the explosion of the Swiss headquarters was 6 years ago from the present day. Again, that's cited in the Fading Glory blog on the trail of Jack Morrison. What use are those 3 dates? Well, they give us a rough timeline for Overwatch's length of existence, when the Omnic Crisis started and roughly ended, and also how long has passed from when Overwatch was probably brought to its knees and disbanded to the actual present day. That gives us a useful context to compare other dates that we can find too. So now we've got some rough timeline starting points there, let's have a little explore hypothetically with this information. For a recent video, I was interested in Winston's history and what rough ages he may have been at key times in Overwatch lore, including how old he may have been and what was going on when he was living on Horizon, the lunar colony. So, starting point, Winston's 29 from his bio on the Overwatch website. If there's roughly been 6 years since Morrison died, quote unquote, and Overwatch was disbanded, Overwatch was around for 2 decades, I'd put Winston at around 3 to 5 years old-ish, presumably too young to do very much, when the first Omnic Crisis actually ended. Now, for the guerrillas to have taken over Horizon and killed the scientists, as well as Winston building his own escape rocket, one would assume they would be close to being adults in size, intelligence and experience. Now, I'm no scientist, and I definitely have no idea on how rapidly genetically enhanced gorillas age or mature, but a normal gorilla apparently matures at around about 10 years old. For a rough timeline of events for Winston, 30 years ago we know the Omnic Crisis started. 29 years ago, a year after the Omnic Crisis started, Winston was probably born. 26 years ago, when Winston was 3, I'd estimate that the Omnic Crisis ended, give or take a few years. Now from 26 years ago to 6 years ago, a whole bunch has happened. We know that Winston grows up, he trains under Harold Winston and scientists, the guerrillas take over the Horizon colony and kill all of the scientists there presumably. Winston builds his rocket, he escapes to Earth, he then joins Overwatch. He graduates, as we see in this graduation picture. We also see him winning medals, shown in recruitment posters as well, and at some point he also designs the chronal accelerator for Tracer, which we see in parts of her lore as well. During this period, Winston also beats Doomfist, as Young Kid says in the original Overwatch introductory cinematic. So he's been pretty busy. What we have to remember is that because Winston has been growing up and presumably on the moon for some period in the early days of Overwatch after the Omnic Crisis, he was probably active in the later stage of things. When we get to the end of that 26 year to 6 year period, that 2 decades that we know Overwatch was keeping the world peaceful for, the Swiss HQ gets blown up, and sometime after the Swiss HQ goes, Overwatch is disbanded. Now again, we don't have a precise timeline for that, but I think the 2 events are quite close together. So, from minus 6 years or so ago till now, Overwatch has been disbanded and Winston's been bouncing around. We presume that for a reasonable amount of time he's been hanging around Watchpoint Gibraltar, and from the launch blog Overwatch is Back, that was also in the Collector's Edition sourcebook, we know that the events of the museum raid that we saw in the introductory cinematic for Overwatch back at BlizzCon 2014 have happened in the timeline in just the last few weeks. We should therefore probably date Recall just before this, in that Winston's teamed up with Tracer again, and we can see that they've then gone on to defend the museum and the Doomfist from Reaper, Widowmaker and Talon. We can fairly reasonably determine from all this that Winston was active in the later stages of Overwatch's 20-year history by virtue of him being too young to have been involved, and therefore we can date the Horizon Guerrilla Revolt and his escape as further into that 20-year period. A second one to have a look at in an interesting way is the change of Mercy's age. So Mercy used to be 34 back in the beta, but she was changed to being 37 just before launch. So let's do a little bit of quick timelining in Theorycraft and see how that affects her. If Mercy was 34, she may have been roughly 4 when the Omnic Crisis first broke out. Now, in her history, we know she's been head of surgery at a prominent Swiss hospital, a pioneer in a breakthrough in nanobiology, and has joined Overwatch as the head of medical research. We also know that when Overwatch fell, she was pulled up in front of a UN committee to try and explain some of what happened in an investigation that took place. With the dates that we've gone through above, Overwatch was active apparently between Mercy being perhaps 8 and 28 years old. We've seen Mercy active in Overwatch's later years. With her old age of 34, if you take away these rough 6 years since the HQ went down, it leaves her at 28 when the HQ fell. Now subtract any years she was active in Overwatch, and her brilliance, scientific research and acquisition of knowledge and rank all get squashed into a shorter and shorter timeline. Now changing Mercy's age to be a little bit older makes her achievements feel perhaps a tad more realistic, given how long it takes the average doctor to train. Of course, with May and Mercy's jokes about their various ages and appearances in game, maybe Mercy's not being entirely truthful about her age. Who knows? Phew, heavy stuff, right? I hope you hardcore theory crafters and lore fans enjoyed this episode. If you've got a more general interest in lore, then hopefully this gives you a fun way of exploring your favourite characters, or maybe just understanding where people draw their conclusions from when they talk to you about Overwatch lore and datings.
You might not want to tell your friends about that. My thanks.
Thanks for tuning into Lore Bytes. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment below with what you'd like to see next, or indeed any topics or questions about Overwatch lore you'd like discussed. For more hero lore, voice lines and interactions, world and level lore, Overwatch gameplay guides, and much more besides, check out the playlists on the channel. I'd love to see you next time. I'm Hammeh, take it easy.